Oh. Hi, everyone. Sorry for the slight delay. We're just getting things worked out on our end. We'll give everyone just a couple minutes to join and then we'll get started. Thanks. I'm muted. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last webinar in our spring series. This series is focused on Native nations and climate change. And this webinar series, just a reminder, is a collaboration between the Southwest Climate Adaptation Science Center, the Southwest CASC, and the National Park Service Tribal Engagement and Climate Change Work Group. So today's webinar will be on engaging Indigenous communities in climate resilience research. We are recording this webinar today and we will post it on our website in the next few days. I'm Sarah Leroy. I'm the Science Communications Coordinator for the Southwest CASC, which is housed at the University of Arizona in Tucson. The University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Just a few logistics first. I'll briefly introduce the Southwest CASC, and then I'll turn it over to Pam Benjamin, who will introduce the Park Service Work Group. And she will then turn it over to our speaker, Skylar Chu, for the presentation. Unfortunately, Carletta Chief will not be able to join us today. She has a family health issue that she's dealing with. So Skylar is here and he will be presenting for us. And so if you have any questions for him throughout the presentation, please just type it into the Q&A box that you can find at the bottom of your screen, and we'll ask him after the presentation. And at this time, I'd like to also ask everyone to please introduce yourself into the chat box. So you can just type your name and affiliation, and that'll, give everyone kind of an idea of who's attending today. Okay, well, so just a brief intro to the Southwest CASC. The Southwest CASC is a collaborative partnership between the U.S. Geological Survey and universities and institutions in Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. Our vision is that the Southwest ecosystems, communities, and cultures are resilient and thriving as the climate changes, and resource management decisions are informed by climate adaptation science. Our mission is to develop actionable science and implementable climate adaptation solutions in partnership with natural and cultural resource managers, policymakers, Native nations, and researchers across the Southwest. Adding to that, we provide objective scientific information, tools, techniques that land, water, wildlife, and cultural resource managers can apply to anticipate, monitor, and adapt to climate variations and changes in the Southwest US. And we foster collaboration between scientists and resource managers. So that was just a brief introduction to the Southwest CASC. This is my contact information in our website here, which I'll put in the chat as well, if you'd like to learn more. On our website, among other things, you can sign up for our newsletter, listen to our podcast called Come Rain or Shine, which is a collaboration with the USDA Southwest Climate Hub. You can also find out information about the fellowship program that we have and other funding opportunities that we might be offering in the future. And so with that, I will turn it over to Pam to introduce the National Park Service Tribal Engagement and Climate Change Work Group and our speaker today. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Sarah, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our last Native Nations and Climate Change webinar this year. And I really want to thank Sarah and the Southwest Climate Adaptation Science Center for hosting such a successful webinar series. So thank you very much, Sarah. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Pam Benjamin. I work for the National Park Service Intermountain Regional Office, and I specifically serve as the Climate Change Response Coordinator for both natural and cultural resources. And I do facilitate the National Park Service Tribal Engagement and Climate Change Community of Practice, which, as Sarah mentioned, is the co-host of this year's webinar series. The NPS Tribal Engagement and Climate Change Community of Practice is a grassroots and informal group focused on information exchange to enhance tribal engagement in addressing resource management issues associated with climate change. The group includes participants from across the U.S., not only within the National Park Service, but from several other federal agencies, academia, as well as tribal participants. We're very dedicated to enhancing tribal engagement through improving communications, not only amongst ourselves, but to a broader audience. And the Native Nations and Climate Change webinar series is one way that we have been highlighting the benefits of engaging with our tribal partners. I will drop my email in the chat just in a moment. And if anyone wants to contact me for information or to join the group, just let me know. And I will move on. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today's webinar, Skylar Chu. He is an environmental scientist at the University of Arizona and is Mohawk Wolf Clan from Six Nations Grand River. And Skylar, with that, I will let you turn it over and share your screen.
All right, thank you, Pam. And thank you, Sarah, for having me today. All right, and if any time, Sarah, that I kind of cut in or out, just cut me off and we can go from there.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and your slides look great. So go ahead. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So hello, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are. This is my presentation, Engaging Indigenous Communities in Climate Resilience Research. And as I mentioned, I work with I'm a research scientist at the Department of Environmental Science at the University of Arizona. And I am glad to be presenting today. And thoughts and good wishes go out to Carletta today, as she's unable to join us. Chwa askanahe, Skylar Chu Giathe, Squarina Gisasita, Disnet Ganyukahaga, Diwaga Fnutne, Yikwajihawe, Swacket, Skagurakwe, Disnet. Skarurit Gayadakre, Nogarakwe. Chikasha Gayadakre, Diwaknanet. Galkana Heratis Tweha Iquigihanet, Skagurakwe, Ganahakit, Diwaknanet. So I just introduced myself in my heritage language. I'm Skylar Chu, I'm Mohawk Wolf Clan. My family comes from Six Nations Grand River, and I grew up at the Tuscarora Nation. And currently I live on the Chickasaw Nation in Ada, Oklahoma. And I just wanted to acknowledge all of the people, past and present, that call the place where I call home their own home. So just to begin, I want to share a little my table of contents of the presentation. I'll give an introduction to the content. An overview of the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, the community that I've been working with for since 2013, and then share the results of our community engagement component of the research, the results of interviews and focus groups, and some final conclusions. And foremost, I'd like to acknowledge the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribal Council Chairperson, the Honorable Janet Davis, and council members for supporting and participating in this research. I'd also like to acknowledge the research participants, Pyramid Lake Paiute's tribal staff and community members for their support and participation in the project, and the The main PIs of this project include Dr. Carletta Chief, Dr. Aleix Surratt Capdevila, Dr. William Smith Jr., and Dr. David Bush. And this research was funded by the USGS Southwest Climate Adaptation Science Center, as well as the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. My research as a doctoral student was supported by a number of organizations that are listed below. I completed my dissertation and my doctoral degree in October of 2020. So to give you an introduction about tribes and climate change, there are more than 573 federally recognized tribes in the United States, and that does not include several hundred other tribes that either have only state recognition or neither state or federal recognition. So there are many indigenous groups that are contending with climate change. And of many concerns that tribes have, some of the primary ones include water resources, reduced snowpack, drought conditions, flash flooding, wildfires, fragile infrastructure, and concerns for community safety. I think it's very important to acknowledge that indigenous peoples possess resilience and capacity to manage environmental change, as they have done from time immemorial through deep-rooted knowledge of stewardship. One way forward that many tribes and scientists are considering is Indigenous climate research collaboration. So there's a growing desire for scientists and tribes to collaborate on climate adaptation projects and efforts. But in order to do this, it is important for researchers to do a few things, and they've been outlined in a paper by Dr. Chief, which includes asking about ethics, doing more listening, following tribal research protocols, and giving back to the community. And in this process of collaboration, it is important that direct engagement takes place with communities in order to implement their own vision for self-reliance, sustainability, and adaptation goals. And one way forward in this arena of climate collaboration research is through community-based participatory research. And specifically, participatory research involves collaboration at all steps of the process to promote resilience, sustainability, and community well-being. In addition, it's important that this type of research is community-centered, and the approach is by and with the community rather than done for and about a community. So it's really important to emphasize that research is done as a partnership, and the community takes a leading role. Through community-based participatory research, citizens are enabled to contribute to the reciprocal production of knowledge, which is grounded in local reality. So citizens, tribal members are actively playing a role in carrying out the research and making sure that it leads to outcomes that are relevant to the local context. And ultimately, it is important that this type of research approach builds local capacity, either among tribal staff or tribal citizens or tribal leadership, and is putting knowledge to use for change through practical outcomes. So that being said, I want to transition over to a discussion, introduction to the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. So the Kuiuitikata are a group of Numu-speaking peoples who have thrived in the Truckee River Basin from time immemorial. In their language, the Kuiui means Kuiwi fish. Kuiuitikata is the name that they call themselves. It means Kuiwi eaters. And Kuiui Panunadu is the name that they give to their body of water. In their language, it means Kuiwi standing water, and more commonly, it's known as Pyramid Lake. And this is a direct quote from former Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribal Chairman Joe Ely, who said, "These three creations give name and identity to the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. If one of the components is lost, the identity from creation and an immemorial tradition is completely erased." So these are the kind of things that are at stake here with impacts of climate change on tribal lands to tribal people. This really sums up the importance that it's not just about the water or the fish or the people, it's all tied together and it's all significant to the tribe's well-being. The Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe today, this is an image of the Pyramid tufa carbonate rock formation. These rock formations are believed to have formed as the former Lake Lahontan, a glacial lake, receded at the end of the last ice age and left these formations. These tufa rock formations are also central to the tribe's identity and their creation oral history, which they have their own knowledge of the importance of these formations around their body of water. The Pyramid Lake Tribal Reservation is outlined here, faintly outlined in red on this map. The Truckee River flows 27 miles into their lake. So the tribal boundaries include a stretch of the Truckee River that flows into the lake. And the tribe actively manages a world-renowned fishery for the well-being of the kiwi fish, Lahontan cutthroat trout, and a number of other species for this system, which is a unique system. It exists nowhere else in the world. This kiwi fish is only found in Pyramid Lake, and this strain of Lahontan cutthroat trout is only native to this part of the world. And the tribe manages this fishery for cultural as well as economic means. Pyramid Lake is a world-renowned sport fishery that attracts anglers every year, and this generates permits, a revenue through permits for tribes' operations. Another larger map image of the Truckee River Basin is shown here. The Truckee River Basin I've outlined in yellow. The Pyramid Lake Indian Reservation boundaries are outlined in orange. And the Truckee River Basin begins in the Sierra Nevada mountains, shown here to the bottom left of the picture. Water from the Sierra Nevadas as runoff and snowmelt feeds into Lake Tahoe, which drains into the Truckee River, as well as a number of other upstream reservoirs that are managed for water resources feed into this river basin. The river flows 120 miles through the metropolitan area of Reno-Sparks into the Truckee River, and it terminates at Pyramid Lake. So Pyramid Lake is an endorheic lake, meaning it has no, only one inlet and no outlets. So this is a moderately saline and highly alkaline system because of all the runoff it receives and all the evaporation that is, the lake elevation is balanced by Truckee River inflows plus any water flowing in, minus the evaporation off the surface lake and groundwater. This river has been heavily modified since settlers arrived in the 1800s. This basin was diverted through a dam that was built in 1905 to the nearby, connected to the Carson River Basin, and the purpose was for this purple outlined area, which was the Newlands Irrigation Project. So the tribe has been contending with the loss and theft of their water resources for over a century. It is important to acknowledge that climate change cannot be understood as separate from colonization. So according to one of the research participants, during and after the Pyramid Lake, after the Paiute War of 1860, a lot of people, indigenous people, left from Pyramid Lake, left here, and a lot of new people came here. So this war forced a lot of people to leave and also displaced other people from other regions into this basin. The Pyramid Lake Indian Reservation by the year 1874 became like a prison camp where the people that knew where and when to gather traditional foods and medicines couldn't show the young people how to carry on these traditional life ways. In addition, federal assimilation replaced traditional life ways with agriculture and ranching. So the Kuiui Takata are fishing people, and the federal government heavily imposed agriculture and ranching as their new primary life way. In addition, boarding schools separated children from their communities and disrupted the intergenerational transmission of language and knowledge. So these are all important to keep in mind, that this all plays a factor in contemporary climate change impacts. So this is a hydrograph demonstrating the elevation of Pyramid Lake over time. So the Pyramid Lake elevation, as you can see, from the 1800s up until the early 1900s was fairly consistent at this elevation. But by the time Derby Dam was completed on the Truckee River, just a few miles upstream from the tribe's boundary, lake elevation in Pyramid Lake drastically dropped. By the year 1940, the original Pyramid Lake strain of Lahontan cutthroat trout was extirpated, meaning it went extinct. There was no more Lahontan cutthroat trout found. A similar strain was introduced in the 1950s, and then as recently as the early 2000s, through genetic analysis, they found another, the Pilot Peaks strain of Lahontan cutthroat trout was verified through genetic analysis to be identical to the original Pyramid Lake strain, and so that has since been reintroduced. So as you can see, the lake dropped to a very low elevation by 1960s, but with the federal legislation of the Endangered Species Act, this allowed for the tribe to work towards receiving more water rights and advocating for less water to be extracted from their basin. And the Endangered Species Act listed the kiwi as endangered, and then the Lahontan cutthroat trout was reclassified, first endangered and then reclassified as threatened. And while these efforts have allowed the tribe to litigate, negotiate, and collaborate with other partners to make through substantial efforts to protect their fish and secure the water rights, the Endangered Species Act also had the adverse effect of forcing the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribal Council to ban kiwi fishing by tribal members since March of 1980. So these federal policies, while for some aspects they're helpful to the tribes retaining their water, they also interfered with tribal traditions and lifeways. So there's many things at stake when considering how to manage these very highly complex systems which people are heavily dependent on. I just want to share with you this hydrograph, which is just updated to the present day. And I just wanted to demonstrate that the Pyramid Lake, the elevation of water in Pyramid Lake is highly variable through time. From certain periods, so say like the late 70s through the 80s, it seems like the elevation is on the upswing, and then by the late 80s and into the 90s, drastically drops. So you see these transitions through time where lake elevation is dropping to near low levels and it's rebounding. So it's a highly variable system. To give you an overview of climate change in the Great Basin, 70% of total runoff comes from snowmelt in the Sierra Nevada mountains. This could decrease by 1/3 by the year 2100. In addition, there have been noted an earlier snowmelt and stream flow by at least 1 to 4 weeks in the water year. And more winter precipitation is falling as rain. The combination of intense wildfires plus extreme precipitation is creating flooding hazards on the landscape. And longer summers put a strain on the demand for water for agriculture, as well as they put a strain on ecosystems. So to give you an overview of how these impacts interact to affect the tribal well-being for the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, this is a little graphic that I created to demonstrate how rising temperatures contribute to reduced snowpack and river flow, leading to increased drought conditions on the landscape. These dry conditions create potential for greater wildfires, more severe and more longer seasons. And the combination of extreme storms and flooding on these burned landscapes create erosional hazards, which I'm going to just briefly discuss one example. So in the summer of 2016, the Virginia Range complex wildfire was a series of 5 wildfires caused by lightning, and it burned lands on and adjacent to the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribal lands. That winter following, rain and snow fell on the debris and loose sediment in these steep environments, steep landscapes. And the atmospheric extreme precipitation storm event in January 2017 led to massive flooding and landslide events, which had extensive destruction on tribal infrastructure and forced the closure of Pyramid Lake for several months, resulting in millions of dollars of lost revenues for the tribe. They had to close the lake off to all forms of recreation. And in this infographic, the hydrograph on the left, this is showing discharge of the Truckee River from between 2015 and 2018. And the one on the right is showing you the elevation of Pyramid Lake. So this is the water that's discharging into the lake at the mouth of the river where it meets the lake, and this is the lake elevation. So as you can see, in January 2017, they had this peak of river discharge through the river at a short amount of time, which as a result led to a drastic increase in lake elevation. However, that was at the expense of massive flood events and erosional events that closed this main road that connects two of the tribe's communities. And as I said, led to closure of the lake. So these impacts in this highly variable system is susceptible to these sudden drastic changes in precipitation and in from wildfires. And so it's not just a question of getting more water to the lake, because these huge erosional events, which do deliver a lot of water at a short amount of time, are having impacts in other areas. So to transition, I want to discuss briefly our research objectives and how we worked with the community to understand more about climate change impacts. So the first research objective involved developing community outreach strategies and tools for the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe that stimulate discussion of climate change issues. Number two, we sought to engage Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe departments and as well as stakeholder groups to understand climate change impacts and vulnerability. And three, we also sought to explore how adaptation and Indigenous knowledge may enhance the Pyramid Lake Tribe's responses to climate change. This is an image I created to demonstrate our iterative research process. So in our efforts to follow Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe's research protocols, we did this through an iterative process to build trust and maintain transparency. So if you look at this image here, it kind of begins right here at this point of the graph, which says the figure, drafting research agreements, interview questions, and other research materials. So the blue arrows are efforts taken by us as the research team, and the green arrows are efforts that are the tribe's approval. So as we submit these materials to the tribe's review committee, and they either approve those through give us comments and feedback. Yellow arrows are steps we've taken to address that feedback. And then once the approval is granted, it's forwarded to the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribal Council for their review and approval. Now at that point, we either get approval to extend our research agreement or get approval for our grant proposals, or approval to disseminate and share the results of research like I'm doing today with outside entities. But for our research process, where we began was we got this approval from the Tribal Council, and then we had approval to consult and plan with the tribe's Natural Resources Department, NRD. At that point, in consultation with the Natural Resource Department, we planned our events, which included a focus group and interviews, as well as a preliminary workshop. And so as we engage with stakeholders, we address their feedback and worked with the Natural Resources Department to address any issues with the process, the research process that we conducted our interviews, focus groups, and workshop. And once those results were gathered, we worked to analyze and summarize those results for the tribal council, which is, continues, or the cycle comes full circle. And as I've tried to demonstrate at nearly all steps of the process, we work to present updates and results to the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribal Council, the Natural Resources Department, and the stakeholder groups that we were working with in order to build that trust and maintain transparency. So in all, as you can see, to take on this process, it is several years of research, not only research, but building that trust and maintaining that transparency and building those relationships. That's key in the need for researchers that are interested in working with Indigenous communities, as well as communities that are Indigenous community members and leaders that are interested in working with researchers and research institutions. This process takes time. So now I'm going to discuss the results of our community engagement component of the research. So this involved a climate change planning workshop. So for this workshop, we followed this 5-step iterative brainstorming process at the workshop. So the first step was to ask the participants to brainstorm any challenges and issues that are facing Pyramid Lake and the environment. And once the participants, thought of those ideas and wrote them down, we had them discuss them in the larger group and begin as a group to create some categories and assign priorities to the challenges by voting with little stickers that they agreed with. In addition, the participants were asked to identify any ecological indicators such as lake elevation or fish species counts that could be used to monitor the challenges that they identified at step 1. And then on the following, so this was a 2-day workshop. So on the following day, we also had the participants work together to brainstorm some possible management alternatives or solutions that address the challenges from step 1. So in addition, they also, thought of the ideas individually, and then as a group, we discussed, they discussed some potential categories and how to prioritize, these solutions that they came up with. To give you an overview of the participants and the facilitators, this included community members of the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe and staff members from 2 departments, for a total of 13 participants on day 1 and 7 on day 2. So it was a fairly small, intimate group. We also had facilitators from our research group, our research team at University of Arizona. And on day 1, we had presenters from USGS, US Geological Survey, US Fish and Wildlife Service, and the University of Nevada, Reno. And these were researchers that gave presentations on their collaborative efforts engaging with the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe on preserving fish species, endangered nesting cranes, and nesting migratory birds, as well as ranch management on the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. And as I mentioned, this was an effort to get tribal members as well as staff involved in the research and coming up with some ideas and solutions. So to give you an overview of the main issues that were discussed, this included the main issues facing Pyramid Lake. These are the main categories: water quantity, cultural resources, water quality, individuals' behavior, environmental changes, legal and upstream issues, and management and governance issues. The main solutions, these are the categories and the votes they received: water quality, again, education and outreach, cultural resources and individual behavior, community organization, reforestation, legal upstream issues, emergency resource protection, and water harvesting. So that was the main outcomes of this workshop. So from this workshop and its outcomes, this allowed us to kind of drive our research priorities. So based on the 3 primary areas of concern for Pyramid Lake, according to participants, which included culture resources sensitivity, water quantity, and water quality, we wanted to focus our attention on an aspect of the local ecosystem that kind of encompasses all 3 of these. And that shifted our attention to the 2 fish that are important to the tribe, the kiwi fish and the Lahontan cutthroat trout. And so through a literature review of these species, we came to understand some main key points of the fish. The kiwi is a very long-lived fish. It can live up to 40 years. It waits for ideal conditions to migrate. So it'll come to the mouth of the river, the Truckee River, where the Truckee River is pouring into Pyramid Lake, and it doesn't have to migrate every year. If the conditions aren't right, if there's not enough water or total dissolved solids or temperature or a suite of other factors, the kiwi can reserve its spawning energy and come back next year and see if the conditions are better for spawning. And as I mentioned, this is a highly variable system. Year to year, the discharge of the river is not, as many natural systems are, not consistent year to year, a lot of interannual variability. And this kiwi evolved uniquely within this basin based on these these conditions. Lahontan cutthroat trout, it's a much more shorter lived fish, 6 to 8 years. It's much more sensitive to temperature than the kiwi, and it prefers the thermocline, which is the depth of the lake at which the temperature is changes from the warmer surface waters to the cooler, deeper waters. And as I mentioned, that original Pyramid Lake strain was extirpated in the year 1940 due to the dams and the lake decline. So because this fish needs to spawn every year up the river, it did not survive. But since then, the tribe has developed a world-class fisheries program, Pyramid Lake Fisheries, for managing both of these fish in the water, and both of these fish are making a huge recovery, and the Lahontan cutthroat trout has been observed to be spawning again in that lower reach of the river, the 30 odd miles that isn't blocked by Bureau of Reclamation dam. So that is a good outcome. So from this literature review, we decided to come up with a video on Pyramid Lake fish survival in this region based on impacts of climate change. And so this video was posted to YouTube and has three main areas of how the fish survive at various depths, how they migrate up the river and when, and then how the kiwi fish, in ideal conditions that the kiwi fish likes to spawn in. And one of the main outcomes of this this part of the research is that the Pyramid Lake Museum and Visitor Center has been using this video to share with their guests and visitors to Pyramid Lake when visitors have questions about climate change impacts to the fish. So that's a very good impact of this objective, which was to stimulate discussion amongst the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe of climate change issues. Now I'm going to transition to the second area of results, which include our research interviews and focus groups. So this included interviews and focus groups. This graph is showing in blue individuals who participated in a focus group. Green is individuals who did both an interview and a focus group, and yellow is just those who participated in an interview. So as you can see, we had 31 total participants from 11 tribal departments, as well as 2 federal agencies that work with the tribe, 2 representatives from agencies. And the interviews took place between October 2016 and February 2018, and the focus groups occurred between June and July of 2018. So the next few slides are just going to show you a very brief overview of the results. So this includes 3 main areas of impact. So the number one is climate change the main theme is climate change impacts and vulnerabilities. And these were broken down into 6 subcategories. The first 3 subcategories include extreme events, water resources, and environmental impacts. On these tables, files refers to the number of interviews in which a specific issue was discussed. So 9 means that 9 individuals or interviews or focus groups talked about floods. And references is the number of times across those 9 interviews floods was discussed. These graphs show the percent frequency that these issues were discussed. So as you can see, even though wildfires was discussed by 11 people 19 times, there was more of a discussion as a count frequency of the length of the excerpts of storm events. So storm events were talked about. So this is probably because people were talking about the storm event that affected the lake in 2017. Whereas, maybe wildfires, there was less discussion, but more people talked about wildfires. So as you can see, there is some variation between these two representations of the results. So the 3 main areas I mentioned: extreme events, water resources, and environmental impacts. Another area, another 3 subcategories included impacts to operations, impacts to culture resources, and impacts to identity and livelihoods. So those are the main categories of impacts that were discussed and the subcategories. Now, in the next major area of results is discussion of adaptation and planning. And so for the first question, participants were asked either to define adaptation or climate change adaptation. In addition, several themes came out of the discussion around these main areas, which included mismanagement, community engagement, funding issues, operations planning, strategic plans, ecosystem restoration, and Pyramid Lake Paiute tribal governance. And these were very, very interesting discussions around these main areas for planning for climate change. In addition, the interviews and focus group participants discussed potential natural indicators that could be monitored to better understand climate change. So as you can see, this included plants, timing of seasons, elevation of the lake, the river flow, animals, insects, birds, snowmelt, and other aquatic species, fire frequency, and groundwater. Now, the final area of results, which we summarize, included discussions of how Indigenous knowledge plays a role in climate adaptation. So the first question asked participants just to define Indigenous knowledge. And from those definitions, several main themes came out of that discussion. And those themes kind of created a sort of way to organize the results, the other results related to Indigenous knowledge. So those themes included knowledge and history, practices, intergenerational transmission, colonization, land, and survival. And in addition, the participants were asked to indicate if the tribe has Indigenous knowledge today. And the 3 main answers were Indigenous knowledge exists currently, the tribe is losing Indigenous knowledge, and intergenerational transmission of this knowledge is needed. And the final graph or figures I have to share about our results include Indigenous knowledge for planning. So this was one question of how is Indigenous knowledge useful just for planning, not necessarily related to climate change planning. And these were the main themes that came out of those responses. In addition, participants were asked, what's the importance of Indigenous knowledge for climate adaptation? And a number of themes emerged from that discussion. And finally, discussion turned to any values, beliefs, and practices that are important for the tribe's adaptation. And so these main themes that arose became very important for that analysis. So now I just want to transition to some brief conclusions to share about our findings. And this includes a comparison of the main categories from the workshop. And I may not have mentioned the workshop took place in 2013, and then the impacts that were discussed in the interviews and focus groups between 2016 and 2018. So as you can see, there's a lot of overlap. Water quantity and water quality were discussed in both at the workshop and during the interview and focus groups. Cultural resources came up as a main theme in both. Environmental changes, individuals' behavior was related to identity and livelihoods. And then management issues and governance was very similar to operations. One major difference between the workshop in 2013 was that there was more discussion of legal aspects and upstream issues related to how to protect the lake from further diversion of water resources to upstream users. Since the tribes at the end of the basin, they suffered heavily from water being diverted. And in contrast, that wasn't as much discussed in the 2016-2018 interviews and focus groups. There was more focus on extreme events. And one reason for that would be potentially in 2013, the lake was reaching a very low point in its, in the history of the lake's elevation through time. The lake was on a decline. But by 2017, the winter of 2017, the lake was on a huge rebound. And so elevation was up considerably compared to the previous couple of years when the workshop took place. But the impacts of that lake rebounding were way more focused on the extreme events and how that water event, that rain event in just one day washed out, tribal infrastructure. So that was, I think, one of the reasons for that shift. So all that is just to say that these impacts are constantly changing from throughout time, and nothing is constant as far as climate change. Managing for climate change is constantly evolving. So some lessons learned from our community engagement. The workshop shed light on the need for engagement with a diversity of stakeholders. As I mentioned, we only worked with, at the workshop, we had tribal members and 2 staff departments. And so we found that a broad participation by many stakeholders provides a more robust picture of how climate change impacts across the community. That was the justification through our interviews and focus groups. We reached out to as many tribal departments and federal agencies as we could to get a better picture of those impacts. In addition, we learned more about how stakeholders are concerned about a wide range of climate impacts. And building trust was strengthened by our efforts to maintain transparency and follow tribal research protocols. And just to wrap up my last slide, the impacts of community-based participatory research. These are some main outcomes that the participants identified as important to the tribe's adaptation. So foremost, education, outreach, and community engagement are top priorities for adaptation planning, according to the participants. The participants said that a bottom-up approach initiated by individuals could be important. So not as much reliance on the tribal government and funding and other agencies coming in and having more of a top-down approach, but having individuals from the bottom up initiate these efforts was emphasized. In addition, action-oriented planning should remind tribal members what can be done, offer tools, and build consensus and community buy-in. And ultimately, Indigenous climate research, this is what the participants emphasized, that Indigenous climate research should be reframed in a way that works toward decolonization and returns agency to the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. So at this time, I'd like to say Nyawa, thank you for your time. And at this time, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Skylar. We do have some questions. I'll give you some easy ones first. So Nancy McPherson was asking if you could just provide a link to your dissertation and CV. or?
Okay, yeah, I can share my CV with you, Sarah,
Mhm.
and if anybody wants to see that. At this time, I'm not allowed to share my dissertation without prior approval of the tribe, but we do have a paper coming out, hopefully by the end of this year, discussing this research, and I'll be happy to share that with you, Sarah, as it comes out, and then maybe you could share it to the network.
Of course, yes. Yeah, so I'll have everybody's contact information. I'll follow up. I'll send your CV. And then I also, because this is another question, Deborah was asking if you'd be able to share the Indigenous Climate Research Collaboration Best Practices Guidance paper / document that you mentioned.
We don't necessarily have a document, but I can share these slides, which has maybe they're referring to that image, that infographic.
I can
share
ask,
my slides.
Okay. Let's see if Deborah, I'll allow you to talk if you want to elaborate on what you were looking for.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for the great presentation. And that slide with the graphic image was extremely informative, and I think will be very useful. And I might have been mistaken. I thought that you had referenced before presenting that slide that there was, your chief had produced something like a document or some sort of guidance around that, but perhaps it was that slide and I was mistaken. So yeah, whatever.
Sure, yeah. Sure, I'll be happy to share my slides with Sarah.
Okay. Thanks, Skylar. And Deborah, I'll post a link in the chat too, because I know of a good resource for working with Indigenous communities also through the Climate Science Alliance. So I'll pop that out in the chat in a little bit. Just another resource to add to the list. Okay, so this question's from Amanda. She said that she appreciates your context of colonization section before moving forward. Could you speak to how this outlook remained key in your participatory research when it comes to evaluating goals, funding opportunities, et cetera?
Yeah, I think one of the main things is to consider that it wasn't just about the lake level is down because of drought or because of there's more wildfires. These are all interconnected. Climate change is a result of, capitalization, globalization, and colonization. Those are all interrelated. There's a lot of relevant work by Dr. Kyle White on how these continue to contribute to colonization. It's a continuum of impacts as a result of settler colonialization. So that was really key for our discussion of our understanding of Indigenous knowledge, because it's not just an issue of, well, what's the Indigenous knowledge and how can it, help us adapt to climate change, just the tribe or other sectors of society. Colonization prevented the tribe from, carrying on those traditions that otherwise the tribe might have been able to adapt to these impacts. Things as simple as reservations. Tribes were migratory. Groups always migrated. So if there wasn't enough water or fish in one place, they moved. But our modern settler colonial society prevents that. So those are all, I think, important factors that were important for us to understand. It's not just about the environment; it's about the people and how they are prevented from interacting with their landscapes and their species that they've known from time immemorial.
Thank you. Next question. How were the interviews and focus groups recorded, and where were takeaways or results validated with the participants?
Yeah, so we just did audio recordings, and then I transcribed those interviews. And then at that point, I shared all of the transcripts back with each participant to verify, if they had any issues with anything being shared. And then as far as results being maintained, so because of several tribal staff participated in the interviews, we wanted to protect those tribal staff from any type of, if they say something that's contrary to what somebody in a leadership position might believe, we wanted to protect them from any type of retaliation or anything like that. So we only shared summaries of the results with the tribal council. We didn't share any raw data with anyone other than the individual participants as a step to protect them. Because it is very easy to identify, the fisheries manager at this point in time was this person, so we didn't want anything to be traced back.
Sure, that makes sense. Any other questions? We're coming up on the hour. People have wonderful things to say in the chat, so you should take a look at that when you have a
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for the opportunity to present. This has been, I think, a long time coming. We've been really hoping to share these results with the Southwest Climate Adaptation Science Center. And I think that the support that we got from the Adaptation Science Center has been key in our understanding of how to engage, because it's not necessarily, I think, one of our outcomes, and this is what we're trying to share in our adaptation or our publications, is it's not necessarily about the specific outcomes, but how the research was carried out, that I think can be have a lot of impacts for other people that necessarily aren't in this part of Nevada.
Definitely. Okay, we did have another question come in. There was a mention of Dr. Carl White. Could you specify which work?
Oh, Kyle White, yeah. I'll just put that.
Kyle, yes.
Kyle, yeah. Kyle
Yep.
White is the researcher that I would highly recommend seeing his work on colonization and climate change.
Yep. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much, Skylar. If anyone has questions after we sign off, feel free to send me an email and I can connect you with Skylar. As I stated, we did record the webinar, so we'll post on our website along with Skylar's presentation slides, which I will do a follow-up email to everyone who registered for the webinar, and I'll send the slides as well as your CV. And then when you have your paper published, then we will follow up again. So. Yeah,
we're hoping the end of this year, Ecology and Society, we've been accepted. So.
Okay, well, good luck with that. And thank you again so much for taking the time today. Our thoughts and prayers are with Carletta and her family as they deal with some health issues. So
yes, yeah, thank you for having me. I hope you all have a good day.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining. Have a good rest of your day.
Take care.
Bye.